9 good reasons to DNF a book. I'm going to rattle these off from least important to most important reason. Grammar error. Everyone's tolerance level is going to be different on grammar errors. As a professional editor, I notice them a lot, but I'm pretty lenient on it. It doesn't usually take away from my understanding of a story or even my enjoyment of it, simply because I read through so many things with so much grammatical problems all the time. And that makes me a good candidate to read things on Kindle Unlimited because often the authors who publish there are self-published. They either can't afford or don't have time to get a professional edit done. And usually you need more than one to make something really stand out and shine. No one can catch all their own mistakes. So no matter how good a writer they are, there's just grammar here, grammar there, that's a problem. When grammar does become a problem for me is when there's something else wrong with the story, and that's when I tend to put the books down. Repetition. Do not keep hitting the same themes and plot points over and over again. If you've told me once the character is an orphan, you don't have to keep telling me. Or that the character might be sensitive to father, daughter, son situations. I know why. Also, don't keep telling me something is sad or hitting again and again about how difficult a decision is for a character. You can tell me once or twice, maybe even 3 times about it if you space it up enough. But if you just keep hitting the same point over and over again, I am bored, and I also think that you think I'm stupid. So I'm just going to put the book down and move on to something that treats me like the intelligent person I am. Poor writing style. This varies widely from reader to reader. For me, this is addressing tone more than it is the actual mechanics of what's in the story. So instead of asking questions like,
Was this written succinctly? Is this in the right place in the story? Could we have told this information better?
I'm asking things like,
was this meant to be funny? What is the tone of this? Is this like from an educated person's point of view or from someone who dropped out of school? How are the characters talking to each other?
Are they friends? Are they antagonistic? And these things can be done well and still not appeal to me. Like if the characters are too friendly and familiar with each other, and I don't know why they're like that, sometimes that bothers me. Like if they have very wildly different character traits, but for whatever reasons they're friends because the story needs it, that might make me put it down, even though usually I like when characters get along. Or if characters are disagreeing and refusing to communicate with each other, even though they're fully capable of that, again, it's something that feels like a plot contrivance, and a lot of times that'll make me put a story down instead of continuing to read it. This is also one where the story might be really good and I might still rate it very highly but not want to finish it, just because I don't like the tone of the piece or I'm not in the mood to listen to something like that, but I can still recognize that it was done well. Poor writing quality. This is another one that varies widely. No matter if it's at work as an editor or if it's in my fictional entertainment, I'm always wondering,
is this the best way to say this? Is this the best order of things? Is there a way that we could get this scene or this information to do more? Is there some way to simplify this or make this more accessible to other people?
And because I'm always on the hunt for this, I think I might be more sensitive than other readers to when a story is just not doing the most it could be doing. I try to give it a pass and to push through it, but if there are too many points where I'm highlighting something in my Kindle and rewriting it to be better or making a note that it should go 4 pages back or 5 pages forward, then that's a problem and it takes me from enjoying something or even critically analyzing something, which I usually find enjoyable, to actual work. And when that happens, it's usually when I stop reading. Over-reliance on tropes. So pitching a book can be a really difficult thing, and in more modern times, we often rely on tropes or common plots and mashups to kind of advertise the story to potential readers, which means it's really common to go in and be expecting a love triangle or a pick-me story or a monster romance or an alien romance or a chosen one trope or a general hero's journey epic fantasy style story, or maybe a Star Trek meets space opera meets something else kind of mashup. All of this is fine for pitching, and it's even fine if you kind of use this blueprint in your writing, but I'm going to need way more than this to keep me in the story. You've got to take those tropes and stereotypes and common things and somehow make them their own. Give me a twist. Give me something new and fresh. Like, I love a werewolf story, but if you're just going to give me all the werewolf stuff and not integrate it into the story so it makes sense and give me something fresh and new, then I'm going to put that book down and move on to something else. There's too many books on my TBR to be read list for me to be wasting my time with something that's not giving me anything unique and is just painting by the numbers. Offensive material. Usually I don't care about offensive material if the book actually addresses the subject matter or treats the subject matter as gross or disgusting as it usually is. Where I come into conflict with offensive material is when the book either treats it like it's a good thing, or they don't address it at all, or they just kind of leave it up for the reader to decide. Now I realize offensive material is different for a whole bunch of different readers, and some people's offensive is other people's just like shoulder shrug. I think if you stop reading a book because you find the material offensive or you find the presentation of the material offensive, that makes 100% sense to me. A lot of exposition or description in the prose. So I want to be shown, not told, when I'm reading a story. So if you're giving me a prologue with a lot of history or backstory, if you're starting me off with a long prophecy, I'm out. And a lot of times this leads me to DNFing books very early in, because in fantasy and science fiction, there often is a prologue with this history situation going on in the front. And I just don't effing care. If it becomes relevant, tell me when it's relevant. Don't give me a lecture in the front end, okay? One way I alleviate this problem is I often choose to skip the prologue, or I'll read a couple lines, see what's going on there. And if it's one of those, here's my whole backstory or childhood, and this will be relevant later, maybe kind of things, I just don't read it and move on with the story. As far as description goes, I really don't care about the small minutiae of how characters get from point A to point B. Like, I just get bored and I don't care, and I don't need that to know all those things happened. Occasionally dropping a physical detail about a character is nice, but I don't need to know every outfit they've ever worn and every look they've ever decided to showcase. I certainly don't need to know about their lipstick or their jewelry or their clothes. If they're wearing a pendant that has significance, that's one thing. But if it's just different styles for the sake of it, I'm not really into reading a lookbook. And sometimes a character's description is relevant, like if they're short and they can't reach something, then go ahead and mention that. Or if they're much taller than everyone else and they stand out, so it makes it much harder for them to hide in small places or to blend in with a crowd, go for it. But I just don't need a play-by-play of every physical thing a character has. I'm especially not that interested in eye colors at this point in time. Like, a single line mention is great, but don't give me a paragraph describing the color. The book triggers my anxiety. As a reader, I've always been a fan of dark and creepy stories, things that have been willing to go to some more avant-garde, creepy sort of places. And I found in 2020, somewhere along the lines, I just couldn't get into plague and dystopia fiction anymore. And I think some of that has to do with my real world life and what has me anxious and worked up here. And since 2020, I've been slowly getting back into plague and dystopia fiction and finding my love of it again. But it has made me hyper aware that sometimes things are just way too serious or dark or related to a topic that makes me anxious. It makes reading become really unpleasant, and it also slows me down and stops me from reading other things. So it's better just for me to acknowledge that I'm not in a place to read that right now and move on to something else. The idea of picking that book up makes you want to stop reading entirely. While reading is one of my oldest and dearest hobbies, not all books or all moments are equal for reading. So if I am going through a book and reading it and I put it down to go to sleep or go to work or do whatever I gotta do, and then I have some free time again, I'm thinking,
I should really read something.
And the thought of picking that book up makes me think,
Nah, I'll do just about anything else.
Then it's probably about time for me to let that book go. And since I'm a mood reader, me not wanting to read the book doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that for whatever reasons, I can't take that book. And that's going to be my 9 good reasons to not finish a book or to DNF a book. So tell me in those comments down below, did I catch all the reasons you might choose not to finish a book? And what is your number 1 reason not to finish a book? And as always, keep reading. Bye!